Hello again. So previously we've talked about forming a claim for a position paper. This time we're going to talk about supporting that claim. So the successful components of a position paper, first that claim, then the body paragraphs that provide support for the claim, and then a section of the paper that presents an opposing viewpoint and your counter-argument to that opposing viewpoint. So remember, a claim then is in a position paper. The thesis is often called a claim. It must be debatable. That is, people can fall on either side of the issue and have reasons that support their positions. It must also be focused and sufficiently qualified. That it has a kind of narrow scope and that it's not a sort of all or nothing claim. So we've worked on refining your claim. So now let's talk about how to go about supporting it. So primarily what we're going to be developing here are reasons and then evidence in support of the reasons. Now, it is important that you distinguish between the two. The facts aren't necessarily the reasons. They're evidence that either shows the importance of your reason or the truthfulness of your reason. So, reasons answer the question, why should the reader agree with the claim? So let's take a look at a claim. College students should meet a minimum GPA requirement of 3.0 to register for online classes. Now, I'm not advocating this. I'm just presenting this as a possible claim. But it certainly is debatable. You would have to agree with that. So you want to cite multiple reasons as you kind of work your way through an argument. If that's the claim I'm trying to support, then one of the things I might suggest is that success in online classes requires the students be motivated and learn independently. And then I think this deep into the semester, you'd all agree with that. Another reason then might add to that students with higher GPAs have demonstrated the responsibility and motivation required for success in online classes. That might be where that the root of that claim lies. And again, those reasons then become the topic sentences. And then the paragraph is developed with evidence to justify and illustrate that reason. So you might think that you might understand that when we began this process before, you want to identify the reasons in support of it, and then those reasons become in themselves mini research projects. What is the source, or maybe a combination of one or two sources that help justify and illustrate the reason that I've presented in support of the claim. So if that reason evolves then into a topic sentence. So if I've identified success in online classes requires the students be motivated to learn independently, in my final paper, that becomes the first sentence of a paragraph or maybe a pair of paragraphs that develop that. Even more than in traditional face-to-face classes, students who are taking online classes need to be highly motivated and must be able to learn independently. That becomes the point of the paragraph I'm about to develop. Another reason here, there may be exceptions to the rule. While there may be exceptions to the rule, most would agree that students with higher GPAs have demonstrated the responsibility and motivation required for success in online classes. So here I have to develop, either from my own experience or perhaps using research done in various education journals, that correlation between higher GPA and responsibility, motivation, maybe what is referred to as grit to finish something. So the evidence then answers the question, well, how do you know? How do you know that this reason is accurate or true or important? And you develop this with logical evidence. Facts, statistics, peer-reviewed studies are very important in this. Other authorities in this particular topic, I'm going to be leaning very heavily if I'm trying to develop this on the experience of maybe college administrators, journal articles about success in online classes, that sort of thing. And examples from personal experience or from sources. And I probably have some examples of those if I track back through the success rates in my own classes. Reason and the type of evidence that would support it. Success in online classes requires the students be motivated to learn independently. I might include research from an authority on online classes, a paraphrase or quote from this authority stating that students who succeed must be independent learners and highly motivated. Statistics from a survey of online learners explaining why they withdrew from a course or performed poorly in it. Specific examples that illustrate a common scenario for online learners: lacking strong reading and writing skills, procrastinating, falling behind on assignments, failing to plan or organize sufficiently to meet deadlines. Again, a combination often of authorities, facts, examples lead to a more compelling argument. Now let's take a look at the opposing viewpoint. Credible writers always consider their readers' views as they plan their argument. Likewise, somewhere in their paper, they acknowledge at least one, usually the strongest, opposition to their claim. Now, we think about possible opposing viewpoints to this. College students should meet a minimum GPA requirement of 3.0 to register for online classes. You might want to think in terms of where would you find the naysayers. And there's a chapter in They Say, I Say about planning the naysayer, and it's very useful in providing templates to both set up an opposing viewpoint and to present a counter-argument against it. So certainly take a good look at that before you write this section of your paper. It seems to me there are two groups of people who might be opposed to this. One are students themselves. Obviously, some students would think this is unfair and might even be a big obstacle to their college education. Another group of naysayers, I think, would be people who've done research in the field. These often are referred to in kind of the generic term studies indicate, but certainly if we can find a study that questions the connection here between GPA and success in online classes, then that would be a kind of goal for us, at least in the sense that it would show the reader that we've done our research and have considered other points of view. So we might start out this way in planning the naysayer, beginning with the students themselves. Many students would object to the GPA requirement I've argued for on the grounds that it is unfair and even discriminatory. No doubt many would claim that because of the difficulty of balancing work, family, and attending face-to-face classes, their poor grades have not been a true reflection of their abilities and motivation. Given the chance to take online classes, they would argue their GPA would actually improve. That's a reasonable way, I think, to present that argument. If I've done a good job establishing the groundwork for my argument, that's going to look like I'm listening, but I can still fall back on the mountain of evidence I've marshaled in support of that 3.0 requirement. Now, it would be, though, useful, and I consider it really a requirement for this assignment, that you provide a study that supports it. And so if I locate a study that kind of backs this up, then I should introduce it here, and here's how I would do it. There's some evidence in support of this objection. One study has shown that, and then probably indicate that idea of a barrier to that online classes help overcome barriers to higher education. Now, it may not indicate that those students do better in online classes. It would just probably support this idea that other methods of delivering classes create certain barriers to students. So the counter-argument then, sometimes called a rebuttal, is your response to the opposing view. Considering opposing views and countering them as in an argument or position paper increases your credibility as a writer and strengthens your argument. It strengthens it just in the sense that if there is an argument out there that is going to be in the back of your reader's mind throughout the whole time they read the paper, if you don't address it yourself, then it is certainly something that is that can undermine what you're trying to do. Now, there are templates in They Say, I Say to make concessions while standing your ground. On the one hand, I agree with X, that, blank. But on the other hand, I still insist that. So if there is a study that indicates that online classes do remove some barriers to higher education, I can agree or concede with that, but I can still insist that GPA requirement is, is essential because just removing the barrier doesn't make students successful. You can sort of see how the next template might be used in the same way. And just another part of They Say, I Say from the readings this week have to do with saying why it matters. So that ultimately what is at stake here is. This is a great way to set up your concluding paragraphs, and one of the reasons I included it in this module. So ultimately what is at stake here is, well, what is at stake with students being successful in online education? An awful lot. So there are a number of the templates that you might use and adapt to your own purposes as you write the conclusion for your paper. All right. So as an introduction to supporting your claims, let me know if you have any questions.